These are some of the scenes providing the backdrop to the president's visit to California. Raging wildfires that have burned millions of acres, wiped out whole communities, and left dozens dead. Scientists say blazes like these are being made worse by climate change. But Donald Trump spoke of other concerns after landing in California to meet with top officials.
And we have to do a lot about forest management. Obviously, forest management in California is very important.
California Governor Gavin Newsom said those concerns were justified, but he and other officials went on to press Trump on climate change.
We have not done justice on our forest management. The science is in and observed evidence is self-evident that climate change is real, and that is exacerbating this.
If we ignore that science and sort of put our head in the sand and think it's all about vegetation management, we're not going to succeed together protecting Californians.
Okay, it'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Hey, well, I don't think science knows, actually.
And earlier that day, harsh words from Trump's Democratic presidential rival Joe Biden.
If you give a climate arsonist 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised if we have more America ablaze? If you give a climate denier 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised when more of America is underwater?
But Trump has his supporters even in deeply Democratic California.
I was displaced by the Tubbs fire. I woke up with my city in flames, and the Democrats have not done their due diligence policy-wise. And so if there is a component of global warming, it is a very, very small component because the Democrats are failing California.
Meanwhile, firefighters on the front lines face challenging conditions with shifting winds and drier weather sparking several new blazes.
Let's get more now with DW's Amian Esef joining us from the Capitol building in Sacramento, California. Good day to you, Amian. These fires are absolutely catastrophic. The images certainly are very disturbing, and they've also become highly politicized. How are they playing a role in President Trump's campaign strategy, considering he only spent just a few hours in California?
That's right. It was a quick stop, and it was unplanned. It was not part of his trip out west, part of his campaign trail, if you will. But he came in anyway, and it seems to show that Trump is conscious that with these fires, unprecedented fires, making headlines nationally and internationally, he had to finally say something. He's been quite silent about that for a couple of weeks. He wants to perhaps look like he has the situation under control. Now, in the meeting, as you can see, he deflected criticism that this was his fault and said that it had more to do with forest management in California.
Amian, what's been the reaction from some of the voters where you are to the president's visit?
Well, this is a largely Democratic state, which is one of the reasons why he hadn't planned on coming here. He's not really worried about the votes here. He thinks he'll lose the state anyway. He lost to Hillary Clinton by 4 million votes in the last elections. So this wasn't a part of his planned trip because the voters here are already turned against him. Just 2 years ago, he said that Californians need to rake their forests more and totally denied that climate change had anything to do with this. This doesn't sit well with the people here, especially since the federal government owns more than half of the forests in California, and the state only owns 3%. So it doesn't sit well with those voters. There were a lot of Trump supporters at the airport this morning, however, to see Air Force One land to give their support for their presidential candidate. So there is a bit of a mix here, but then again, there was protests there as well, and they clashed with Trump supporters.
Yeah, we heard that some of those anti-Trump protesters actually ended up in hospital during the president's visit. Can you tell us more about that?
It was a scene that's becoming much more common in the United States, where protesters protesting Trump, Black Lives Matter protesters lining the streets, blocking traffic, are hit by cars. Now, this happened in two separate instances. here in Sacramento, where protesters were attempting to block the streets and cars just ran into them or sideswiped them, and that sent 2 people to the hospital. There was another instance of a protester climbing up on a police vehicle and being dragged away by that vehicle.
Okay, now the president's visit comes as California struggles with the pandemic, with the effects of the lockdown. What kind of economic impact are these fires having?
Some estimates, Brian, have put that figure at $150 billion in costs to the West Coast because of these unprecedented wildfires. That's a big number, but to put that into human figures, this means thousands of homes, thousands of businesses burnt to the ground. This means thousands of people homeless. Hotels are almost fully booked in this area. It's hard to find a hotel room because so many families have been displaced by these fires. There was actually a collection of canned food at some hotels around here this morning for the people here. So I don't want to exaggerate, but I have to say it is bleak here, especially with the pandemic and California still being in partial lockdown.
Amin Essop for us in Sacramento, California. Thanks so very much for that update.